Good morning, everyone. This is Dan O'Sullivan with your Bucks Island area fishing report for Saturday, December the 13th. Christmas is fast approaching, and we're going to unwrap some presents from our friends, Tom Lee Gentry, and I'm filling in for Tracy this week, but we got his information to share with you. So we'll be right back exactly with what the guys have to say. Folks, we are just 12 shopping days, 11 shopping days away from Christmas, and our favorite elf, Tom Ott, is going to share how we can put a few greenies under the tree. Tom, what's going on at Lake Guntersville?
Well, I tell you, Dano, that fat man in the sky has definitely brought some big presents out there. It's just, anybody that's driving around Guntersville, you drive across the bridge, there's birds everywhere. And I'm telling you, it's just stocked full of bait right now. The water finally got to a real good temperature. We were talking a few weeks ago about the crappie, and once it got down there into the high 40s, that's what we're seeing right now. Those fish just gone crazy. As far as it's kind of hard to get around the scoping guys. They're out there, they're catching fish like crazy. But that's really the best way right now to catch a bass is get out some of these larger creeks or around the bridges and the causeways where all that bait is, and just look for those fish. Maybe in the top 10 feet of the water column there, and they're just coming up. It's unreal, what these guys are catching. I think there was a high school tournament last week with 26 pounds, and fourth place had 21 pounds. So, that gives you an idea of what the lake's fishing like. And I would say the majority of those with the big weights are definitely doing the scope thing, but you can still catch them out there on your traps. And of course, the A rig is just, on fire right now. Anywhere in that 8 foot of water, 8-10 foot of water around grass and bait, that A rig is just really kicking it. And keep in mind, this time of the year, keep your baits a little bit smaller. The larger baits will come into play in a few months, but right now, just keep your baits in that 3.5 inch range, and that'll really put some fish in the boat for you. The crappie are doing exactly what we want them to do. They're starting to move into that shallower water. I was catching some fish. I've caught some real nice crappie the last few weeks, but catching some fish in that 4 to 6 foot of water late in the day, but starting out earlier in the 12 foot, 10 foot range. But again, it's just so much bait out there. These groups of crappie are just following them around. So I really like to fish the grass edge. I stay, don't fish the causeways as much, but when you see those cars there, you know what's going on there as well. So those fish are definitely
Yep.
biting.
Well, Tom, is that Alabama rig too. That's a great thing to use even on forward-facing sonar because you can kind of scout those long casts to get in front of them, and that's another great tool. Hey, Tom, thank you for everything that you do. We'll see you again next week. Hey, we rolling up on Christmas time. We've got 11 shopping days left until the big Santa shows up. But our favorite claws right here, Lee Pitts, the king of crappie on Weiss Lake. Lee, what's going on Weiss and Neely Henry?
Fishing's pretty good right now. It's if you can bundle up and get out there in the cold weather, you can catch some fish now. Our crappie are kind of taking the center stage. We're catching a lot of good crappie right now. Several different ways you can get out there. The vertical dropping womennas, catch them. You can also get these live scopers and get up there casting to them. Still in the brush. Most of the fish are in our major creeks and on the river channels right now. Look for that wood cover. That's what the fish are holding on. They're getting in the brush and just kind of holding tight to it, just waiting to ambush some little minnows coming through. Even some of the shallower bite is kind of turning on a little bit. We're throwing a float and a jig on it. We're throwing some of the slab slayers and the baby shads and things like that with our Bobby Garland baits on a float about 4 or 5 foot deep, and just kind of slowing it down and just hovering it around that brush and letting them come out there and get it. The long lining is starting to kind of be a player a little bit. The fish are not really spread out a whole lot. They're really isolated on the structure, so that's why your vertical dropping, you're casting to them and throwing a float is working pretty good right now.
I know the crappie are going on Neely Henry too, because there's been some guys out there deep. I'm hearing 20, 25 feet. But I want to talk about the bass bite on Neely Henry a little bit right now. I'm hearing they're still in the grass. What are you hearing?
Well, you got water at Neely. You still got water in the grass at Weiss. With our drawdown, they pulled it out of it, so that's not a player for us now. But at Neely, the fish can get in there. The grass is still kind of good and thick. It keeps a good cover to it as long as you've got water. That 2-3 foot of water in it, those fish are going to stay in it because that's where your bait's going to go to. It's coming in on some of these banks, especially if you got a little wind pushed in there. And what they're doing, they're just getting in a good comfort zone where they can lay and absorb some of that heat that's coming off of that grass, especially sunshiny days. It's going to be a little warmer water, more active, more bait. So that's a great place for them to ambush. Spinnerbait bite's been pretty good right now. You can throw a blade, chatterbait, something like that. And then of course, that frit side and that little square bill has been good. Slowing it down a little bit, ticking some right out in front of the grass and on some of these rocky places. So, the bass bite, Weiss and Neely is still pretty strong right now.
Yeah, and I had heard that the bait had gone kind of all the way to the back, but now that we're getting these cold nights, they're going to start pulling out a little bit. But folks, I'd start in the back and start working your way until you run into the fish again. Lee, as always, brother, appreciate everything, and we will talk to you again, my friend, soon. Hey, we got our Gentry Gordy joining us right here. He is always a present, something that we get to unwrap all the time with his knowledge. Gentry, we talked Lake Martin last week, said it was a mess. We shared a few ideas and thoughts. What are you seeing out of there?
It's not getting any better, Dano, but there is a positive side to it. The water's been stabilized. The water's down. It's been down for a little bit. The temperature's finally dropped. My dad's up there today. I talked to him. He went back to Sandy, and it's got a little bit of color to it. Now, it's still clear, but you know what I mean? Compared to the rest of the lake, it's a little greener. 57-degree water temperature. He said there's a lot of little fish starting moving up, eating the crankbaits again. The smaller chatterbaits, like the little juniors and stuff, but they're just not big. And I asked him, I said, well, did you scope any offshore, any? He said, I looked around, seen some. He said, and I don't know if it's just today being the high skies, high pressure, they're just not committing to it. But he struggled, and, I think he said he's caught 2 keepers. So the little fish are moving up. The big fish are going to be behind them as that water drops down a little bit. They'll get up there and they'll start eating those crankbaits and those rattle traps a little bit better.
The crappie around the lake. Have you guys seen what those boats are doing? Are they out off the brush piles, ends of docks? What are we looking for?
I did talk to my buddy again, and he said they're still on those trash piles, and they're mixed in with those smaller spotted bass. He said it really hadn't changed much. He said later in the afternoon, you can start running some of those shallower 6-8 foot. But he said for a better part of the day, your better crappie are still sitting in that 10 to 12 foot range.
All right, Jordan Lake. I'm sure grass bite is still there. We're hearing it's still decent at Lay Lake, so I'm sure there's still some fish around that too. Correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely there is. But man, that tournament last weekend up there, 17 and some change, I think, to get a check in the top 25. Talked to a good friend of mine. He said, man, the whole river was lined with people using forward-facing sonar, dropping minnows on them, jerk baits, Alabama rigs. It's just insane up there right now with the spotted bass. Still catching some good fish on a jig, up that river. Everybody's out scoping the middle. The fish are higher up in the water column chasing the bait. But that old ball jig coming down some of those eddies and bends and stuff like that, still getting bit too. But down the lake, the grass bite still, get a good windy day, spinnerbait, chatterbait, stuff like that.
Well, brother, as always, we appreciate everything. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week. Hey, our elf, Tracy Robinson, is busy out delivering presents right now, but he has sent forward some information for us to be able to talk about Logan Martin and Lay Lake fishing. So let me start with Logan Martin. We're going to just give Tracy's information, of course. He is the expert on the bodies of water. We're going to share what he has to say. These warm days have really kind of had the fish going. They're kind of turned on right now. They're chasing bait. They're chasing lures. That's what it's been. But the water's down a little bit, and these cold fronts are going to start driving those fish off a little bit. But while it's still warm, before it gets cold over the later part of this weekend, look for largemouth on some wood cover. spinner baits, crankbaits, bladed jigs like a jackhammer or a chatterbait. Those are going to be key. Around wood, it could be docks, it could be laydowns. Any of that kind of stuff is going to present because they'll want some hard cover to lay around. I'd look to the outside edges of those, of that cover, because the water is down a little bit. Chunk rock banks are the most consistent bite right now with a crankbait. And the A-rig and the minnow bites with forward-facing sonar in creek ditches. Those are important to chase right now. That's where you're getting a lot of consistent bites, but you're going to get some better ones shallow probably. Crappie, they're being caught in the creeks, 10 to 12 feet of water on jigs. You're going to want to fish those things around those brush piles and watch where those fish are, and maybe some of the brush off the edges of the docks. Okay, Lay Lake. Again, still a grass bite. Flipping a jig or plastics creature baits is still a good bet for you right now. Some of the heavier stuff, as that stuff starts to die out, it puts some warmth into the water initially, and you want to punch some of that stuff. The big weight, big bags are still coming out of the grass, 20-pound bags in some of these tournaments this last week. But then in the middle of the river around that standing timber that you see out there is a good bet for some forward-facing sonar. You can get out there on that, be able to see them around the bait balls, and then still with whether you've got the ability to move with a lipless type crankbait or even a spoon, and your A-rig will be good out there along with the minnow. Crappie are also around that standing timber. There's a lot of bait balls around out there. So look for those fish suspended around those trees. If you don't have forward-facing sonar, get out there and throw on that vertical cover. Let things fall slowly, and you'll just have to respond to fish that are biting. You obviously can't pick them off because you're not looking at them with the forward-facing sonar, but you still can catch fish on some of those suspended steep walls and the standing timber like that. You should be okay. If they're deep enough, you might be able to get on top of them and see it with vertical sonar on your trolling motor, or however you happen to have your stuff set up. But anyway, that's the report from Logan Martin and Lay Lake. Thanks to Tracy. He helps us every week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Well, that wraps up our Bucks Island area fishing report for Saturday, December the 13th. Hey, thanks to the guys for everything that they share with us every week. It helps all of us put a few more fish in the boat. The crappie are biting. The bass are still biting on our rivers. So they're sharing that information. And folks, don't forget, hey, this is going to be our last week open until Christmas, until after the new year. So we'll be open until Saturday this week. And then starting on the Tuesday before Christmas, we're going to be closed. So if you're looking for that perfect gift in the tackle store, come and see Colin and Jamie up in the loft. Of course, if you want to put a bass boat under the tree or a pontoon or a nice aluminum boat, hey, we got it. You might be able to fit that thing under the tree. Santa may not get it down the chimney, but we'll do what we can to help you. Thanks for being the best part of Bucks Island. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you again next week.